Elon Musk wants to talk to you for 2 minutes right now, because your future depends on it. Archangel Michael says, the window is open for only a breath of time, and what you do inside this breath will echo through every room of your destiny. The air hums as if a turbine has awakened somewhere above your ceiling. Light tilts, shadows stretch, and a countdown that no clock can show begins to throb behind your ribs. He says the next 2 minutes are not ordinary minutes. They are compression chambers where excuses cannot follow, where delay cannot fit, where you step in with your fear but step out with a blueprint. He says you are not late. This call arrived at the exact second you were ready to stop pretending and start moving. He says the door you keep staring at is not locked from the outside. It is latched from within, held shut by your old story. He says you will not walk through with the same name, the same posture, the same gravity. He says you will shed the dust, take the call, and convert silence into momentum. The room quiets. Your screen flickers. A thin white line becomes a pulse, the pulse becomes a tone, and the tone becomes a voice that many recognize from headlines and launches and restless midnights. The voice is focused metal and morning sun, and it fills the space like a rocket plume that does not scorch but clarifies. 2 minutes, the voice says. That is enough. The first 10 seconds, contact. You do not adjust your seat. You do not rehearse. You do not apologize for what you have not done. The first 10 seconds are for contact, for the shock of hearing someone speak to the part of you that has never been fooled by the part that is often afraid. The voice cuts through every layer that tried to grow over your mission. The next step is smaller than you think and bigger than you allow, the voice says. You will take it now. The hum inside the room grows steady. Your heartbeat finds the same rhythm. A private gravity locks in. Archangel Michael says, accept the transmission with both hands. Let it settle into your bones so completely that you cannot misplace it. He says to treat these words as hardware, not wallpaper. Install them. The next 20 seconds, first principles, strip away the myth, the voice continues. Forget what it is supposed to look like. Forget how slowly others moved. Forget whether they liked you for it. Reduce the problem to its raw materials. What is the goal in its most naked form? What is true about it regardless of rumor or tradition? What resources already live in your reach that you have been pretending are out of stock? You retrieve a pen. You draw a box. You write the goal without adjectives, without drama, without apology. Archangel Michael says, truth multiplies when it is written. He says you will build from the ground of what is undeniable, not the fog of what is fashionable. He says you will honor the mission by speaking to it plainly. The next 30 seconds, elimination, subtraction, the voice says. You bring too much luggage to a sprint. You list 3 obligations that look important but do not feed the future you are building. You draw a line through them. You list 3 more that give you the sweet taste of progress without any nutrition. You draw a line through them. A visible lightness moves into your shoulders. Every yes costs fuel, the voice says. Reserve burn for the trajectory that matters. Learn the difference between acceleration and noise. Archangel Michael says, you will not apologize for traveling light. He says some people admire the heavy cart because it looks heroic. He says you prefer a clear runway and a silent conscience. The next 30 seconds, irreversible commitment, make one decision that cannot be reversed without embarrassment, the voice says. Leave the cave. Send the message. Book the room. Publish the date. Commit in public, and let the pressure consolidate your focus. You pick an action with a timestamp. It is not a fantasy promise whispered into an empty hallway. It is an action that places a stake into the calendar and draws your momentum to meet it. You imagine the face of a future ally reading your commitment. You press send. Archangel Michael says, you have given your destiny a rendezvous point and a deadline. He says time respects those who stop hovering and start landing. He says the ground will meet your feet because your feet finally dared to approach the ground. The next 20 seconds, build the machine, create the loop, the voice continues. One loop, simple and repeatable. Input, action, feedback, iteration. Do it daily until you are bored, then do it precisely because you are bored. You sketch the loop like a circle that cannot be broken by mood. You fill it with the smallest unit of creation you can produce even on a day of shattered weather. You choose a tracking number that will not lie to you. You promise not to keep score with feelings. Archangel Michael says, your loop is a modest throne where your future sits and grows measurable. He says boredom is not an insult. It is the sound of skill consolidating into second nature. The next 10 seconds, select your alliance, choose 3 people, the voice says, who are already living in the gravity you want. Study their calendars, not their highlights. Study their losses, not their trophies. Send one useful thing to one of them today. You write the names. You write the practice you can offer. You write the window when you will deliver it. You do not perform reverence. You perform relevance. You do not aim for applause. You aim for alignment. Archangel Michael says, value is a door that opens more doors. He says the world is crowded with fans and hungry for partners. He says you will stop auditioning and start contributing. The next 30 seconds, build your energy engine, treat energy as a product, the voice says. If your energy fails, your strategy is only poetry. You draw 3 inputs that raise your baseline. Sleep like a contract signed with dawn. movement that refuses to negotiate, nutrition that does not turn your afternoon into fog. Then you define 3 drains that look harmless and cost you hours. You set automatic gates against them. You place your devices where your future would place them, not where your boredom asks you to. Archangel Michael says, your body is the first company you will ever lead. He says you will be a kind boss and a strict gatekeeper. He says your mind deserves clean fuel and quiet lanes. The next 10 seconds, inoculate against fear. Fear is a schedule, the voice says. It always arrives when you are near the door that matters. You feel the old tremor crawling back to offer a negotiation. You answer with a list of 3 micro-actions you can perform even while afraid. You remember that fear cannot keep pace with forward motion. Archangel Michael says, courage is not the absence of fear but the dominance of mission. He says resistance only bites those who stop moving long enough to be bitten. He says you will remain in motion. The next 20 seconds, audit your environment, move 1 object, the voice says. Upgrade 1 corner of your space to match the future version of you. You clear the desk. You donate the chair that hurts your back. You remove the stack of dusty intentions. You set up the instrument or interface you will touch first every morning. You place your vision where your eyes land when they are still soft from sleep. Archangel Michael says, environment is silent mentorship. He says your space will rehearse the person you are becoming before your mouth learns how to pronounce it. He says order is not decoration. It is velocity. The next 30 seconds, establish your noise protocol, silence the channel that always tries to sell you delay, the voice says. Turn off the feed that feeds on you. You choose designated hours for consumption and hours for creation. You anchor your day with a double-lock morning ritual that does not depend on mood, weather, or anyone else's urgency. You schedule contact with the world as a choice, not a reflex. Archangel Michael says, you will stop outsourcing your attention to machines that never loved you. He says your mind will become a quiet lab where breakthroughs walk in like they were invited. The final 30 seconds, the 2-minute door, now the door, the voice says. Open it by starting one thing before the call ends. Not afterward. Now. You begin. You do not warm up on the edge. You step into the work. A document opens. The first sentence, they multiplied. The voice pauses. The room stills again. Your pulse is a drum that has learned a new song. Repetition is rocket fuel, the voice says. You will not need me every time. You will behave like your future even when no one is watching. The call ends. The silence is honest. You are not hollow. You are occupied by a task that pulls at you gently but without permission to stop. You mark your wall with the number 1 to honor the first loop completed. You write the next loop start time where you cannot pretend to forget it. After the call, your Day 1 playbook, you print a page titled Day 1 and tape it where the old calendar used to hide your delays. It is not a mood board. It is a list of non-negotiables written in a voice that sounds like your best self after a storm. 1. First principles check. Each morning, state the goal in one sentence. State the truth you know. State the resource you already have. 2. Subtraction sweep. Remove one task, one object, or one expectation that does not feed the mission. Daily. 3. Public commitment. One stake in the ground before noon. A visible action with a timestamp. 4. Loop run. Complete the daily loop. Record the count. No heroics. No holidays from your future. 5. Alliance offering. Deliver one useful contribution to a person or community living in your target gravity. 6. Energy engine. Guard sleep, movement, and nutrition like intellectual property. Protect baseline. 7. Fear protocol. When fear wakes, perform an action so small that fear cannot argue with it. 8. Space upgrade. Maintain one corner that looks like tomorrow and refuses yesterday's clutter. 9. Noise protocol. Schedule consumption. Reward creation with measured, meaningful input. 10. 2-minute door. Start before the mind gathers reasons. Begin now, not later. You add a footnote. Never negotiate with delay. You initial it. You mean it. Week 1. Proof of motion. Day 2 arrives with less thunder and more steadiness. That is how real change travels. The loop gets done. The tally moves from 1 to 2. A micro-ally replies with interest. You deliver again. The second loop makes the first look like a signal, not a fluke. Day 3 arrives. You wake before your alarm, not because you are a hero but because you put your phone across the room and your cups clean the night before. You do not stumble through fog. The engine holds. The gate remains closed to noise. The work sits where you promised the work it would sit. Day 4, a small obstacle pretends to be an avalanche. You remember the fear protocol. You execute micro-actions without ceremony. Momentum refuses to treat you like a stranger. Day 5, you refine the loop. You remove 2 steps that performed vanity, not value. You shorten the distance from input to output. You publish a thing that feels like a beginning and a standard simultaneously. Day 6, you track a metric that actually predicts your outcomes instead of one that flatters your boredom. The number climbs slowly. The slow climb makes you trustworthy to yourself. Day 7, you reset space. You upgrade one tool, not out of panic but alignment. You prepare your clothes and your corner like a launch pad. You go to sleep curious instead of anxious. Archangel Michael says, this is not hype. It is the quiet conclusion of hundreds of tiny votes cast for your own life. He says you are no longer waiting for permission from clouds. You are issuing tickets to the future from your own desk. Month 1, the quiet revolution. 30 loops later, your hands move like they have been sworn into something secret and honorable. You respect the boredom that taught you this rhythm. Your reputation with yourself becomes your most valuable currency. Small wins stack until they begin to look like a staircase. You notice that the old noise sounds different now. It is not a command. It is a suggestion you decline without ceremony. You interact with the world on purpose. Your circle tightens to those who prefer doing. The air around you loses the scent of crisis. You recall the call as a hinge, not a miracle. A hinge is more powerful than a miracle because it can be installed. You install it in other rooms of your life. Health, relationships, money, craft. The same loop. The same clarity. The same subtraction. You study the calendars of your 3 chosen allies again and send them something useful without asking for a parade. One of them opens a door. You do not sprint through in desperation. You walk through with a plan and a pace you can keep. Archangel Michael says, this is how compounding introduces itself. Not with fireworks but with a sudden sense that you have become the kind of person your future can trust with more. Month 3, the signal breaks through. The thing you make begins to behave like a signal. People who need it find it. They find it not because you screamed the loudest but because you showed up the longest. They send messages. They bring stories of their own loops. You answer some. You ignore the rest. You keep building. Your environment looks different in photographs. There is order where there was clutter. There is simplicity where there was sentimental noise. Your calendar reveals a shape that would make your younger self proud. You become allergic to theatrics and addicted to follow-through. You surprise yourself with the quality of your no. You decline the kind of exciting chaos that made you feel alive while costing you weeks. You choose the kind of quiet that makes you feel plain while funding entire futures. You remember the 2 minutes without nostalgia. You remember them like a lever you can pull, not a ghost you can only chase. When your energy dips, you return to the engine. When your focus scatters, you return to subtraction. When your courage flinches, you return to the door that always opens for those who start before they feel ready. Archangel Michael says, you did not build a project. You built a person. Projects end. People continue. Year 1, the new normal. A year after the call, you look back and see 10 or 12 decisions that changed the weather. None of them involved fortune smiling or a gatekeeper blessing your name. All of them involved you honoring your loop on days that looked unremarkable to everyone else. You are not hungry for proof anymore. You are hungry for refinement. Your work now speaks with its own lungs. Your partnerships move without drama. Your mornings feel like the beginning of a chapter instead of the cleanup from the last one. You keep the day one page framed. Not because you need the reminder, but because you plan to put it into other hands who have not yet learned what a 2-minute door can do. You become the voice for someone else. You do not pretend to be their savior. You guide them back to their own loop. The world stays noisy. You stay precise. The world tries to provoke you. You remain busy upgrading a corner, delivering a contribution, subtracting another obstacle, opening the door again and again and again. Archangel Michael says, carry the call with dignity. Do not turn it into a brand new distraction. Honor it by becoming impossible to knock off balance for more than an hour. Honor it by leaving the people you meet a little clearer than you found them. Right now, repeat the 2-minute door. You stand up. You reset your shoulders. You bring your body to the place where the work begins. You set a 2-minute timer not because you need permission but because you enjoy the burn of a clean start. You open the door again. You start one thing before the first beep. You feel the quiet satisfaction of a person who no longer waits for better weather. You move, not because the world is watching, but because the future is listening. The hum returns, not as an interruption but as the new silence. It is the silence of a life that has chosen its orbit. It is the silence of engines that keep their promises. The day goes on. The loop renews. The number grows. There is nothing left to prove, and everything left to build. You smile at the page. You write the next line. You get on with it like someone who knows that 2 minutes were enough to begin, and beginning was enough to change everything. If you wish to express your support further, you have the option to give super thanks, with contributions of up to $20.